right, good morning. I know it's pretty early for some of you out there. If you're on the west coast of the United States, then good morning to you. And I hope you are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Got yourself some coffee or something to wake up so we can do some Photoshop brush color mixing, okay? And that's what we're going to focus on today for the brush hour. If you've watched this show before, you know it's pretty much all about the brushes, and I am pretty much all about the brushes, so I'm really glad to be the host of a show like this. Thanks for joining me if you're overseas. In Europe, in Western Europe, somewhere in Southeast Asia, wherever you might be watching from, I don't know, let me know in the chat so I can see where you are when we're all hanging out together and learning about how to mix color in Photoshop with brushes, mixer brushes, smudge tool, and we're gonna get cracking, okay? So let's just jump over here to Photoshop and take a look at what we have today. Here are just a couple of examples of color mixing that I did. The examples that you see here, here, and here were all done simply by using brushes. A little bit of smudge tool used over here on this bad boy. So we're going to talk about all of those together. Alrighty, so I want to start by talking about the most basic and commonly used way to mix color in Photoshop, and it doesn't involve using any really special brushes, to be honest. All you need are brushes that respond to the pressure of your stylus, to impact the opacity or flow of the pigment, okay? So why don't we check that out? Now, those of you who have watched my shows in the past know that I'm always talking about this enormous collection of brushes that you have available to you if you're a Photoshop brush subscriber. And all those brushes are available if you open up your brushes panel and look up here in the top right corner. And you're going to find this little drop-down menu, and here we have the option to get more brushes. And that is your ticket to a wealth of thousands of brushes that you can use and enjoy. Now, some of them I have loaded here today. I'm going to work with those. So we're going to get started here in the old Megapack, okay? And all I'm going to do is scroll through this massive list of brushes here. And I'm going to pick something very simple today. That's the big wide softy, okay? The big wide softy brush looks like this. So you can see that it has some opacity settings tied to pen pressure. If I use lighter pressure, you'll see that I'm going to get less opacity with my brush stroke. I'm going to size that brush down a hair and show you the most commonly used means of mixing your color when you're working with a digital painting environment, okay? So get a slightly darker color. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to say, all right, I'm painting along, la, 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 la. And I'm going to have another color. Okay, right here, let's grab this sort of a nice green like this. I like that color. I'm going to have a green that I want to blend, okay, or mix with this blue. So right up here, I can have a solid chunk of color here next to a solid chunk of color there. Before I go mixing it with my smudge tool, go reaching for that smudge tool and blending away, let me show you what people do most commonly. In order to stick with one tool and not have to switch around, they will use the brush that has this opacity tied to the pen pressure, and they'll just paint lightly like this over the blue. And then, because I've got my keyboard right here next to me, and I always use key commands when I paint, I'm going to hold down the Option key. Now, I'm on a Mac. If you're on a PC, you would be holding down the Alt key. I hold down the Option key and I can sample color now anywhere on my document, from the blue straight through to the green, but also this area here where I just painted with light pressure. Now you know that that color, if I paint it off to the side, is going to be a very subtle blend of the blue and the green, because the green, as I was painting over the blue with light pressure, was not fully opaque, and so it allowed some of that blue color to show through. So now with this other color, as I paint over here, okay, you can see that I can make a softer transition. Grab the blue again, grab another color, and back and forth with this method of sampling with the eyedropper and then painting a few brush strokes. All right, so I'm sampling, painting, sampling, painting. All right, now one of the tricks to making this look good is how you are painting your brush strokes. And what I mean by that is which direction are you moving them? How are you rotating the brush? How are you working with the bristles of that brush, the shape of that brush, to make what looks like either a very smooth or a very painterly kind of a blend with your colors? So it's one thing to do this. Down, down, down. I'm doing up and down strokes. Come over and grab the green. Up and down, right next to it. And then up and down more lightly, up and down more lightly, up and down more lightly, up and down more lightly. Constantly grabbing those colors. That's one way to blend. Okay, so all the brush strokes are uniform and they're moving together like so. But what about this? Let's grab that color here. Put some color down. Okay, same thing at the moment. I'm just putting it down with the vertical strokes. All right, but now as I come over into the blue with the green, I'm going to go up this way and across that way and through. Grab that color. Okay, now what am I doing? Well, I'm making it a little bit more visually broken up and interesting, right? These shapes are a little bit more varied, right? Changing up the angles, changing up the width of the stroke. And that could be a really, really nice way to blend a little bit more, quote unquote, painterly. And all this done with a brush that really doesn't have any visible brush strokes to speak of, does it? But even so, you can make these interesting shapes and these interesting directional strokes with the stylus as you would with a paintbrush. One of the things you want to avoid when you are painting digitally is this. Doing everything like you're coloring with a crayon. Okay, so this sort of back and forth scribbly kind of motion. Remember that you have the option, especially with custom brushes, to paint in different directions, with different pressure, and build up that surface in a more unique, dynamic way. So take advantage of that stylus and experiment with what you can do, okay, with the direction and the pressure, the size of the brush that you're using, so that you can really get the most out of that advantageous position that you find yourself in with a stylus versus painting with a mouse, which is certainly no fun, at least for most of us. All right, so that is the most basic way to mix color. It's been going on for years. You could even just, in Photoshop, if you wanted to use the basic round brush, the default round brush, which I'm sure I have loaded here somewhere. Here we go, general brushes. Hard pressure, round pressure opacity. This fella right here. A classic, if ever there was one, right? And, just grab another color. Check it out. Light pressure, light pressure. Look at how nicely that blends, okay? So I go from this bright green to this bright blue, and in the middle, just sample some of that color, and voila, you're in good shape. All right, so you don't even need a fancy custom brush to make this technique work, do you? No, you are in good shape. Okay, now I want to take a look at another means of blending using custom brushes. And before I do, I'm going to say hi to some folks in the chat and see where everybody's watching from. Let's see. Hey, all right, we got lots of folks here. Nice to see you, Sean and Andreas. Hello, Steve. Hey, Andre and Judith. Nice to see you. From the UK here. All right, cool. Watching from the UK, watching from Florida, be creative. Cool. I see someone from the Midwest. Hey, Mel, what's up? Sean in Germany, guten Tag. Annika in New Delhi. Wow, amazing. Thank you for watching. I've not been to South Africa, but I have some good friends from there. Andre, thanks for asking. Hey, Anne from Switzerland. My kids were lucky to go to Switzerland last year. I didn't get to go with them. Wow, 2 years ago, actually. Everything feels like it was in the past somewhere with COVID and everything. Hey, Bruce. New York. All right, cool, cool, cool. What's up? Oh, man, lots of folks here. What's up, Z? And Tim is here. Noor is here. Hello. Dorina. All right. Dylan here from Mexico. Cool. Buenos dias. All right. Well, let's get cracking. We're going to move this show along now. And I'm going to open up the Megapack. Now, The Megapack is the very first brush set you'll see if you download my brushes from that download page I showed you at the beginning of the show. Remember, you come up here, you go to Get More Brushes. That'll take you to the mother load. And in the Megapack, you're going to find different painting categories. I want to quickly clarify something. This has been a point of confusion for people for, I want to say 6 years now. Long time. When I first put the Megapack out, it was a combination of a paint box and a drawing box that I was selling separately. The Megapack grew into its own special thing. It grew into about 400 brush collection in many different categories. What the Megapack is not, it is not a collection of all of the custom brushes that you can download. In fact, it is completely its own unique set. Despite its name, it is completely its own unique set with about 400 brushes. There are another 1,400 or 1,500 brushes available to you in all those other separate sets that you see on that page. The spatter brushes, the halftone brushes, the manga brushes, the dry media brushes, the watercolors. None of those are in the Megapack. They are separate. So be sure to grab them. A lot of people grab the Megapack and they think, there, I've done it. I've got them all. No, not at all. You just scratched the tip of the surface there. You haven't even gone deep enough. You're not even up to your knees in brushes yet. But here in the Megapack, there is in the paint box a brush that I want to call to your attention. And let's see here. It is called the Watercolor Fill Brush. Watercolor Fill. Okay, it's in the paint box. And this is an example of a kind of brush that can help you do some blending in a very subtle and soft way. And the way it works is put some color down here and then use very light pressure. And you'll see that you can get almost down to nothing with this brush. Okay, and you also get a really lovely watercolory texture, paper texture here, and some little changes in the hue, saturation, and value that are subtle thanks to color dynamics, which we've covered in other classes, but we're going to talk about more today as well. Now I'd like to pull in some pink and blend it with this, so I'm going to come over here. And what I'm going to do is exactly the same technique as before, only this time I am not going to sample any color and paint after I lay down my second color. So this is a two-step process. And the way I use this is for times when I know for certain which two colors I want to have blend with one another. And I've designated an area of the painting where that's going to happen. And it's just two shots for me. I fill in one area of color and I come in from the other side and I just slowly move out to 0 with my pressure. See that? And look at how pretty that is. And there's that beautiful purple in the middle. And that's the two colors overlapping one another and allowing that transparency to work so that we get a third color from those two. Now this brush is particularly excellent for this, and I wanted to call it to your attention. Just really works beautifully. Let's try it again with another combination here. And you'll have to forgive me, but you probably can tell I'm losing my voice a bit. And it's because yesterday the weather here was amazing, beautiful, and I went to play some tennis with my two kids. And I'm the kind of dad that when we're playing, I am yelling across the court constantly, great shot, good shot, nice one, good shot, nice shot, great shot, at the top of my lungs, and now I'm paying the price because my voice is almost gone. So, all right, look at this, look at this, look at this. Oh my God, how pretty is that green? Have you ever seen anything so springy, so springtimey and pretty? That is a gorgeous color. And how am I doing that? Two simple steps, right? I've got that watercolor fill brush from the Megapack paint box, and I'm just laying down the first color and then letting it go pretty much down to nothing with very little pen pressure. And then I pull in that second color right on top of it and do the same thing in the opposite direction. Gorgeous. Oh, I love it. Now, another great thing about this, of course, is you can do this inside of selections, okay? So, check this out. We're going to go like this. We're going to make ourselves a nice ribbon right here using the old lasso tool. And let's start out with a nice bright red. And then I'm just gonna fade it to nothing right there. See that? Pop over here to this pretty yellow. And I'm gonna use really light pressure this time, starting from there, and then I'm gonna start building it up. And then have it fade again to nothing right there. And then I grab this blue-green color right here. Very nice. Again, light pressure. Light pressure. Building it up. Right to there, and then almost down to nothing again. And finally, coming in from the other side. A little bit of that blue right there. There you go. Gorgeous. Now I think here I might have gone a little crazy with my pressure, so you just have to forgive me there for botching that a little bit. But isn't that a pretty ribbon of color? Tell you what, I'll even go a little darker here on this side. Make my brush a little smaller. Oh yeah, that's pretty. All the things you can do with just this one brush and adjusting the pressure. I hope you can all see that nice watercolor paper texture coming through. That really adds a little something to it, doesn't it? Very nice. Alrighty. Now, of course, because this is not fully opaque paint, right? You can also have some nice overlay effects. And the mode for this brush is set to multiply, you may have noticed. So if I take that same blue, and I'm just going to paint a stroke right across the middle here. I want you to see how nice it is for those other colors to come through, right? So that opacity is not 100%, and we're using multiply, so you're going to get these other nice colors that you can produce with that brush as well, right? Come over here, and why don't we do a little playing around? Since we can, right? We've got a little time, and this is a painting show, so why don't we throw a nice little shape in there. And just let that fade out a little bit like that. Put a little shadow under the chin here. It's the great thing about this multiply mode. I can just keep making things darker as I go, without having to even change the color, right? All the while, we're having that initial wash of color show through, come shining through. Beautiful. So fun. Very, very light pressure now, just to sort of sculpt in the ocular cavities there. Maybe we could do like a little side lighting situation here. So we're going to have this side of the face in shadow a little bit, right? Like that. And like this. So fun. See how subtle that is? Subtle stuff. Subtle stuff. Have I changed the color at all? No, I have not gone to my color picker, have I? I'm just, because I'm using multiply mode for the brush, right? I just keep darkening things in pieces here. And I'm using that pen pressure to make these shapes have a soft edge to them. So fun. Look at that. Try it. You'll like it. Try it. You'll like it. Okay, now, enough of that. Any questions? Let's check the chat. Can we do this with a mouse? Jorge, I'm sorry, but no, it is not possible. However, I will tell you that the price of graphics tablets has come down so much, tenfold, 20-fold in the last decade. You could probably snag a decent tablet for somewhere in the environment of $40 or $50, as opposed to just, you know, a few years ago, $300, $400, $500. I mean, really, the prices have dropped. They work with any PC, any Mac, so I would say well worth it. Hey, let's see here. I see true color shining. Yeah, Cyndi Lauper, nowhere I like it. Emmanuel, great. Hey, Emmanuel, I love your illustrations, by the way. Emmanuel is an amazing picture book artist. Check out his work. Great fan of the gouache brushes. Still using it too opaque, which makes it a bit too digital. This might be good tips to get that fixed. Oh, hey, Emmanuel, I got something for you coming up that I think you should stick around for because I think you're going to love it. Quick note, folks, if you're watching this on Facebook or Twitter, remember, I am checking the chat at behance.net/live, be.net/live if you want to go for a shorter URL. And that's where you can ask me questions. Okay, well, Emmanuel brings up an interesting thing. I want to show you something amazing now. We haven't even gotten to mixer brushes yet, but I want to show you what you can do. This is the second method, and that is to use color dynamics to mix your color directly on the canvas without even doing anything but using one single stroke of color. Check this out. So you'll notice that we have color dynamics employed with this brush. We've talked about them in the past. While I have this brush here handy, okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you the setting that you need to make this work. Maybe a bit of liquid will calm my throat down as I lose my voice here. Okay. Under Apply Per Tip, you'll see Foreground Background Jitter. This is in Color Dynamics in Brush Settings. I want you to turn on Pen Pressure. This is our control, Pen Pressure. All right, now once I do that, I am actually going to be able to use the foreground and the background color at the same time to mix my colors. So my background color, which is currently this light blue, I'm going to set it to a nice bright pinkish kind of a red color. Okie dokie. And I'll make this blue a little brighter. Okay. All right, now let's get our brush up to size again. And here's what I'm going to do. See where it says transfer right here? I'm going to turn the minimum opacity much higher than it normally is, okay? We'll try like about 50 or somewhere in that vicinity. I'm also going to turn the minimum flow much higher to about 30% or so. And the flow of the brush is quite low, 12%. Phew. Let's bump that up to 50. Right out of the gate, this is going to change the behaviors of this brush, and I'll show you how. If I use full pressure, so I'm really bearing down with my stylish and painting a stroke, well, look, I'm going to use the foreground color. But if I use light pressure, what happens? I use more of the background color. And if I use medium pressure, I use them both. And I can go from more red to more blue and back again and all around. And oh my gosh, how pretty is that watercolor wash? Can you imagine doing this in Photoshop? Did you know you could do this in Photoshop? Am I blowing your minds? Check this out. Medium pressure, heavy pressure, medium pressure. I'm just going all over the place with my pressure here. Dark, light, up and down, all the way around. Really light on the outside there, and then dark on that edge. Holy cow. Look at that wash of color. All kinds of shifts from the blue to the red to the purple and everything in between, all happening while I'm painting with a single brush stroke. That is the power of color dynamics that you can employ when you are using pen pressure to activate, alternatively, foreground and background color. Okay? Now this is just, of course, with one brush. So Emmanuel was mentioning the gouache brushes. Well, let's go over to the gouache brushes for a moment. Okay, so in the brushes, we're going to close out our Megapack. And let's see, where did I put those gouache brushes? I know they're in here somewhere. Come on, gouaches. Where are you, gouaches? Oh, general Did I not load the gouache brushes? Unbelievable. All right, not to worry, I'll grab them right now. Doop, doop, doop. I'm gonna do this the old-fashioned way because I have a bunch of brushes in my brush sets that are still saved as tool presets, but that's okay because when I bring them into Photoshop, they will automatically be brought in as brushes. Import as brushes. Ba-dow. Okay. And here they are. All right, now I'm going to work with the Gouache Golden brushes, and I don't know if you use those, Emmanuel, or anybody else out there, but these are some of my faves. Okay, so for example, here's that nice Gouache Beauty. Okay, now of course you can always reduce the flow of the brush, set it down to like 30, for example, and right out of the gate, you're not going to get as much paint coming out as you make the brush strokes. Okay, another thing you can do is go ahead and go to your brush settings and adjust the transfer, so that you want the minimum opacity to be somewhere like in the vicinity of 40% or somewhere thereabouts. So you're going to get less paint and also less opacity, okay? And you can build that up from very light, darker to darker to darker. Okay, you can take advantage then of being able to blend a little more easily if you need to, okay? Grab those other colors, cha-ching, like that, start to blend. Alrighty, so play with those settings first, but now let's take a look at color dynamics. So I'm going to use a larger brush for this. I think the Fat Glaze might be a good choice. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. And we're going to now employ color dynamics. I'm going to use that other color in the background. We'll go to brush settings, and under color dynamics we're going to turn on pen pressure. Now we already know what that does, right? So check it out. Same brush stroke, mixing the color as I go. Now what's fun about this is I can use medium pressure and I can paint brushstroke over brushstroke over brushstroke over brushstroke. And what I'm going to get are these nice visible bristle marks, so to speak, in the color, right? Just by varying the pressure a little bit here and there as I go. And that just makes a really pretty swatch of color. So, you know, if I just wanted to paint like a solid shape like this, okay, I'm just kind of scrubbing around in there, using various amounts of pressure. And I know I want it to be kind of a purpley sort of color. But by painting the red and the blue in that same mix, using varying amounts of pressure as I go, right? What I get is all these bristly brush strokes. And let's try another one. So let's see what else we have here. The Gouache G Flow brush. This is great for details, by the way. I mean, if you really want to, a lot of people actually use the gouache brushes for drawing. See that? They make pretty good drawing tools. So you do not just have to use them for painting. You can draw with these, okay? But let's say I want to do some standard by the book painting with this and I want to use those color dynamics. Come over here for brush settings and just turn on pen pressure. All right, and one nice thing I can do is I can say I want to work with like an orange color. So I'll use a yellow in the foreground and I'll use a nice warm red in the background. Now, with medium pressure, see that? I'm going to get these nice kind of oranges like that. And I just like the way that feels for me to paint an area like this and get a bit of variation in the color happening from that color dynamics. Okay, now I just did a lot of stuff here and I hope that I'm not confusing anybody. I'm going to check the chat and see if there are any questions about this method. Let's see. I have so many brushes. I know the one I want is in there. Yeah, there are a lot of them. Got to keep them organized. The good news is you can search for them now in the latest versions of Photoshop. I actually don't have the very latest version installed on my MacBook right now. It's having weird issues with the latest Mac OS, which I just updated. I don't recommend you all update to Big Sur. It's caused me a lot of problems, frankly. But yes, you can search. There's also a fantastic plugin. I recommend this to everybody. And you just cannot go wrong with this plugin. It's called BrushBox. And it's created by a man named Derek Barth. And it is such a great plugin, such a wonderful utility. You can search for all your brushes. You can organize them. You can use color coding. You can have favorites. There's just so much stuff you can do with it. So check it out, BrushBox. If Mary Blair were alive, they'd be so. Yeah, hey, actually, I've named the brushes after Mary Blair in here because I'm such a big fan. Some of them, let's see. Gouache, G, Blair, there it is. Dry and alternative. You see those brushes I named after her. And there are others as well. Yeah, check out this set if you're not already using it. And then there's the Gouache Classic set, which has other gouache brushes that I've used for many jobs in the past. So something in there for everybody, right? Look at that one. There you go. Pretty soft. You could always, again, reduce the flow, knock that down to 30, okay? Reduce the transfer settings for opacity. I'll knock that down to like about 30 or so. So now I know I can get a light color and I can build up my tone to get to full opacity. And that makes blending a lot easier, right? Just come in here and then do that. Really smooth. Using that eyedropper, that is the key. The eyedropper is your best buddy, okay? Makes it easy to sample color right on top of where you paint it and continue painting with that color right away. Okie dokie, folks. Now let's see. I want to make sure I don't miss anything here with the color dynamics action. So, yeah, once again, I've got color dynamics now employed with that brush, and you can see what that's doing. It's giving me this orange color because I'm mixing the foreground and the background color, right? In the same way that I could mix a bright blue with a nice cool yellow and get this beautiful sort of teal green color happening here like that. Okay, very cool options you have available to you here. All right, now the next thing I want to show you when it comes to blending is the mixer brushes in Photoshop. And mixer brushes don't get as much love as they should. So why don't we open up in the Megapack the real oils category of brushes. So we're going to close up this paint box here. Bye. Open up the real oils. Here's one right here. There's a bristly oil brush. Lovely. And you can see that has like a canvas texture sort of built in, right? So nice to work with this if you're going to do simulation of oil paint in your work. Okay. Now if I grab another color, watch this. It just simply mixes. Look at that. That's it. Simple as that. This is what mixer brushes do. They mix color on the canvas. And there are many ways to control how they mix, how they blend, because at the top where your tool options are right here along the top of the screen here, remember any tool that you select here in Photoshop, you're going to be presented with options running along the top here, this top panel. So over here I have the wetness of the brush. Okay, the wetter it is, the more it's going to mix with the color that's already on the canvas. I could turn that wetness down to like 30%. Okay, and the mixing is going to be more subtle then. All right, go ahead and grab that color there. See, that's not quite as powerful, not as strong, okay? But one of the coolest and best and most amazing things you can do with mixer brushes is this. Let me put some color down. Okie dokie. And I'm going to turn mixing off for just a moment. No mixing. Okay, so now I'm just painting like I normally would with any Photoshop brush. It's not going to do anything. Whoops, a little bit of mixing. Why is that happening? Hang on, let me turn off the... I think I have transfer set to mix. There we go. It shouldn't be mixing anymore. Oh, let's turn the wetness down. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so here's what I want to do. Put some yellow down, okay? And I want to select a color that's similar to this. Little bit greener and a little bit darker. Alrighty, like that. And I'll just put a few brush strokes down like this. All right. Letting a lot of the canvas come through and painting with very light brush strokes. Now, why did I do this? Well, I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm just going to sample this area here. And I want you to look up here at our swatch. Mixer brushes have a separate color swatch. We're not using our normal color picker swatches here. Look up here. You'll notice that I just sampled this area of the canvas, and that entire area is showing up in the swatch. Well, guess what? When I paint with it, check that out. I'm painting with all those colors that I just sampled at the same time. It's a magic. It's amazing. It is the coolest. So, all of you fans of, painting with visible brush strokes, so to speak, right? You want to do some nice, subtle stuff like this. You want to paint with brush strokes that look like they're alive and full of two different colors of paint that are just sort of mixing right there on the canvas inside the bristles of your brush. Here is the secret to making that happen. How about that? Question from Asa. In Fresco, can I use mixer brushes in the same way I use them in Photoshop? Meaning, can I clean the brush after each stroke and sample all layers? Mixer brushes in Fresco, I believe, sample all layers automatically, but I could be wrong about that. Let me double check that for you. I'm pretty sure they do that automatically. But it'd be best for me to just double check on that. So I'll do that. Let's see. Just grab this guy. And, Now. I'll tell you what the workaround is. Here's what you do. Okay. In Fresco, take advantage of the multicolor eyedropper. If you are to hold down the touch modifier, the little circle that's always on the screen that you can drag around wherever you like, hold down that touch modifier with one finger and touch anywhere else on the canvas, and you'll be able to sample any area of the canvas the same way you sample with mixer brushes. And that will allow you to do, I think, what you're describing. Otherwise, yes, mixer brushes work the same way. They even have brush controls. If you open up the brush control panel at the very bottom of your toolbar, when you have the brush tool selected, you'll see the little sliders, and you tap on that, and boom, you open up your brush controls, and then you can see how that works. Is there a cheat sheet for all these different settings? I assume you're talking about the settings of the mixer brushes. There are just a ton of great videos on YouTube and documents that you can find on the internet where people have outlined exactly how each one of these settings works. I could do an entire masterclass on just mixer brushes and how they work and how to use them. We don't have time for that today, but just quick overview. Remember that turning up the wetness means you're going to get a mixing happening no matter what. So I'm going to be able to mix on the surface. Look how lovely that looks, by the way. Doesn't that look good? Really powerful stuff. Turn up the mixing to 100. You're just going to have a ton of mixing happening on the canvas. So of course, if I go and grab another color, right, it's really going to pull that yellow into the paint. So essentially what that means is the higher the mixing, the more of the color that's already on the canvas, it's going to pull with it and mix with it when you paint. All right. The lower that value is, I'll turn that all the way down to like 5. Okay, you're going to be able to have more influence with the color you currently have on your brush over the colors that are already on the canvas, rather than vice versa. I always work with a full 100% value for the load of paint on the brush. That means I'm fully loading the brush with paint. I like to work with this color sampling that I talked about, where I turn off this option to load solid colors only, because I like to be able to sample multiple colors at a time to paint with. Of course, if you want to turn that off, it's as simple as coming here and just saying load solid colors only. And then it'll function like any normal eyedropper, and it'll just pick whatever color it picks up from that area. Okay. Mixer brushes, what a powerful thing. It's kind of like you're taking smudging and painting and mixing them together into one tool, and this is the result. But that ability to sample more than one color at once and paint with it is really quite powerful. Especially for those of you who want to do some subtle, what appears to be like impasto work, or where you can see visible brush strokes. Remember, you can come over here to where it says custom, and there are these nice presets, which are all very handy. And if I just say dry, it's going to give me a dry brush with no mixing. So I can then go ahead and grab another color and just lightly paint over here. And I'm going to sample that whole area with the load solid colors turned off. And now when I paint, you'll see that I'm going to have, whoops, I just turned off the, get the load up to 100. There we go. And grab another brush here. There. Dry, there we go. Oh, I see, it's making the paint run out. Okay, you want to be able to do a dry heavy load. There we go. That way it's always going to be able to paint and not run out. I forgot that it has that ability to make the paint run out with brush strokes. I never use that. If you're into that, great, but that's not my bag. All right, here, grab those multiple colors and now paint with what appear to be brush strokes that are overlapping one another. See that? Very, very handy. I love that. Okie dokie. I want to jump back for 2 seconds to something about, before we get to Smudge, having to do with color dynamics, because I forgot to point this out and I just think it's so neat. Why don't we pick up out of the paint box a great brush for this particular technique. It is called the Creamy brush. Here it is, Creamy and Creamy Variation. They're both very similar. Alrighty, and we're gonna grab a nice sort of bright orangey red color to paint with this brush. Okay, now here is this brush. Now what you'll notice happening, if I'll use a more gray color, and you should see this more clearly here, is it appears as if it is laying paint on top of paint in the same way we were just working. Okay, it's like a really subtle kind of impasto, thick, heavier paint, creamy paint, right? Kind of effect. Well, how's that happening? Because normally in Photoshop, you know, or in any digital painting, when you paint, you're going to get flat color. You're not going to get these little variations happening. The key here again is color dynamics. Okay, so if you look at color dynamics, it's turned on. Now I'm going to increase the brightness jitter to 9%, and I want you to see this effect a lot stronger now. Okay, so it's taking every stamp, every instance of the brush as you lay it down. See that? And it is adding values either in a darker or lighter to whatever color you've sampled. It's going to darken it or lighten it slightly with every instance of the stamp as it's being applied along the stroke that you're painting. And so why is this good for color mixing? Well, what I like about this is a lot of brightness jitter, okay, and minimal hue jitter. Okay, I'll turn the saturation jitter off. A lot of brightness jitter that we got at 9. You could even set it up to something like a 10, okay, but 9 is fine, 9, 10%. And then employing this pen pressure for foreground, background. What you do is make your foreground and background color almost identical, okay? Just slightly different. So I'm just adjusting the hue a smidge here, okay? And then when I paint with it, okay, what I'll do is I'll swap them out. Now I'm going to have that foreground color be the same, but I'm going to now use a different color for the foreground color moved to the background. I'm going to use a different color for the foreground, but I'm going to lighten my pressure as I get closer to this color. See that? So I'm going to lighten my pressure as I get closer to this color, lighten my pressure, heavier pressure, heavier pressure. And then you can get these nice sort of thick paint looking blends because I'm taking advantage of that background color, right? Which was the foreground color. And then I'm able to create this kind of a beautiful blend with the brush strokes. So this is another really powerful way to use color dynamics and pen pressure to your advantage. Pretty nifty stuff, and I really wanted to point that out before we got to the smudge tool because not a lot of people know about this. Not a lot of people know you can do this, right? Look at that. That looks like it's got a shadow and a highlight even. Isn't that crazy? That's just color dynamics. The magic of color dynamics. Woo! Phenomenal. All right, I could play with this all day. Now, let's get around to some smudge tool action, okay? So, we've got about 9 minutes left for me to talk about this. Let's talk about smudging. And we're gonna use a basic brush. Let's see what I can grab here. Got some gouache brushes in here. Sure, why not? Play with some gouache brushes, right? Or maybe I'll go with something a little different in the paint box that we haven't played with yet. Let's see. Yeah, I don't use these glazer's edges very much. They're pretty fun. How about a classic brush, the Gouache A-Go-Go, right? This is the most popular brush I ever made for whatever reason. It just got a lot of use. People really like this brush. So we'll put some colors next to one another here. Okay, we say, well, I want to blend those. Well, what smudge tools should you use? That's the big question, right? Well, think about the brush that you're using when you use smudge, okay? You can't just willy-nilly go grabbing any old smudge brush. This brush has some texture to it, right? It's got a certain quality to it. I want to use a smudge tool that kind of works for that. Now, because it has sort of a dry appearance to it, right? And that texture and everything, would it make sense to use a bristle smudge like this? Well, no, I don't think so. I don't think that makes sense. So instead, let's see, what other options do we have? We have the bristle smudge. These are all painterly smudge tools, right? You know, maybe the soft smudge could kind of work a little bit, right? That might do the trick a little bit. That's kind of too soft, maybe. I think thrash blend might be getting closer to what I want. That's a little closer. But really what I want is something a little drier. And so this is something people don't realize is it's not like because you're using the paint box or using tools in the paint box that you have to use smudge tools from the paint box. No. Why not jump out to a different brush set and use something that is more dry, okay? So for example, in the drawing box, right, you have this rough smudge, okay? Now that, if you notice, has more of the quality of what I'm looking for, doesn't it? That's more kind of what I'm looking for with the smudging. So I'm going to use that. And I'm going to smudge this together like that. And then I can just sample that and carry on painting. Okay, that might be the way to go. So do not restrict yourself to the smudge tools that are in a certain category. Okay, use the kind of smudge tools that will fit your needs at the time. Now, some people will notice that the smudge tool behaves slowly depending on your machine, depending on the size of the smudge tool, depending on the size of your document. There are some good workarounds for this. Probably the best known and most effective is to actually come into your smudge tool. So if I have I'll grab a more painterly one here, jump back for a moment. Use the big painty blender, okay? So for my brush, I'll use something a bit more painty. Perhaps the acrylic brush. All right, so get some color. Some color right here. And I want to smudge those together. Grab my smudge tool and I smudge those together. Okay. Now, if this was going too slowly for me, which, you know, I'm running a pretty decent machine here, so it's not a big deal. But if this were problematic, what I would do is come to brush settings and then open up brush tip shape, the very first option before you get to all these other settings here. And just turn off spacing. I turn it off entirely. Now, if I use a slow stroke like this, it's going to blend very nicely. Okay. A quick stroke is going to break up the smudging so you can see the separation of the stamp, right? But if you're going to go back and forth with that quick stroke, you'll notice that because of the multiple passes that you make, right? All you have to do is make these multiple passes and you're going to be able to smudge very smoothly and over large areas without having a significant amount of lag. The other thing is there are times when you're going to want for that smudging to break apart more. And an example of that would be, let me just grab a charcoal brush to show you this because I think that's a good demo for it. These charcoals are available as well for download, and they're the same ones you'll find in Fresco. But maybe I've got this little area of charcoal here, and then I want to smudge some of it, okay? So with my smudge tool, if I were to use something like a dry smudge, so let me grab again from that drawing pack, the drawing box here. Let's try the rough smudge again. Come over here, and I'm just going to turn the spacing off. Okay, no spacing. Okay. So now, see how I can pull that out to the side? I'm using quicker strokes now. Okay, and then I'm going to slow down here across the edge, but I'm able to pull that out, and it really feels like I'm smudging charcoal. Okay, and the spacing of the smudge tool is allowing me to do that. It's making that much easier. Okay, very, very nice. So play around with these kinds of settings with your smudge tool. Use the smudge tool with, use it as a different brush stamp, use it with different settings to make it feel right for what you are painting and what you are drawing. This is a very important thing. Don't just stick with one smudge tool for everything because you're going to wind up with an inconsistent kind of look between the brush strokes you make and then the kind of blending that you do, and you don't want that to happen, okay? Alrighty, now there was one more thing I wanted to show you, which is with mixer brushes. I'm bouncing back one more time, forgive me. But in the drawing box of the Megapack, there's a very special little group of tools that I almost forgot to show you. And it is the oil pastels. Any oil pastel fans out there? I'm going to show you Oil Pastel Soft number 2. If you are a fan of the oil pastels, which I am, I think they're just so cool, but I also think, good grief, are they messy? Well, I created some oil pastels for you that are actually mixer brushes, because one of the best things about working with oil pastels is the blending. So check it out. Grab another color, and as I come over here, look at that. Push it around, blend it, and you still get all that nice texture from that brush. So very nice oil pastel behaviors here. And you can turn off that load solid colors only. Go ahead and grab a mixture of colors, and look at that. Try drawing with those. I think you are going to have a great time working with these. They are really an underappreciated resource in the Megapack. These oil pastels, there are 4 of them, each with their own qualities, and really I've seen people do some incredible stuff with them, but not enough people. More people have to work with these and discover them to see what's possible. And the mixer brushes make it possible for them to blend in such a gorgeous way, just like the real deal. So really wanted to point those out for you and make you aware of them. And of course they are in keeping with our theme today of mixing color in Photoshop. Well, we covered a lot. I hope it was enough for all of you. Got about a minute left, so I wanted to say thanks again for watching. This is probably my favorite show to host just because I'm so obsessed with brushes. But I do like doing all my shows. But I'm really glad that we have this one on the calendar. These are all going to be on replay, of course, YouTube and Behance, so you can watch them back if there's anything you missed. So go ahead and do that too. Tell a pal and tune in 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks is when we do this show. And I'll be live tomorrow for my Draw Along show at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Everybody, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Thanks for watching. Remember to be kind. And I'm going to say ciao for now. Everybody take care.